Hey everyone, how you doing? This is Amon Green, Green Bay Packers all-time leading rusher, and you're watching Packers Total Access Live, your daily source for Packer content. Go Pack, go!
What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out over at patreon.com/PackerFan Total Access. You can also find this in podcast form wherever you get your podcast. Just search Packer Fan Total Access. I am aware there's a secondary account somehow created with one episode. If you see one with one episode, that's the wrong one. You should have two pop up when you search for Packer Fan Total Access. But make sure you guys go sub to that. Give us a rating over there. We would greatly appreciate it. It is obviously Valentine's Day, February 14th. I thought, let's get in here on Saturday morning, get live early so we could spend time with the loved ones later in the day. So we got a lot of stuff on tap today, man. We've now, if you're in our Patreon group, you've seen that we've got our free agency cheat sheet list. We've got that created for you guys. And essentially what that is the top free agents at positions of needs that I personally like. Okay. There's some other guys that are ranked in there, and you guys make your own list, right? This is just mine that I've kind of put together and said, okay, here are the free agents that grab my attention the most at potential positions of need. So we'll talk about that cheat sheet. We'll also talk about our draft cheat sheet and explain what that is, which essentially is players at position of need for the Packers that are in the top 100 of our PTA big board. And we'll talk about how all that kind of falls into place. If we get a chance, we're going to talk about Devontae Wyatt, potential contract extension. Wendell Ferreira put a great piece up, actually two different articles he wrote in the last 24 hours on Devontae Wyatt. He's been deep diving whether or not Wyatt is worth a contract extension or not. So we may dive into that a bit as well. Also going to do a mailbag at the end. So if you guys got super chats, get them in early, and we'll hit them at the end of the show, as well as some of the questions in our Patreon group if I hold up. A little bit under the weather this morning. So we'll see if we can get through all those topics for everybody. I know the chat's already filling up in here. We got Chris in the house. We got Thomas Ott in here. We got Clint rolling through. What's up, Clint? Hopefully you're doing well, buddy. We got Blake B in the house. He said, I'm on board with Big Citrus from Iowa State and Proctor from the, I think, what is it, Southeastern Louisiana State University, I think. Maybe it's South Central, whatever it is, right? The Mud Dogs. I love it. Active D tackles. Hey, there was someone else that popped up yesterday. Who was it that said it? Someone on X, and I responded to it. I think it might have been Jacob Morley. It's somebody on Twitter, a really good follow on Twitter. I remember that on Packers Twitter, and he brung up Caleb Proctor, and is it Caleb Proctor? There's two Proctors. Maybe it's Caden Proctor. I can't remember exactly. Let me just take a quick glance here, because I know it's not Caden Proctor, so I think it's Caleb Proctor is the one we're talking about, right? Defensive tackle, small school, but people are starting to notice him now. And every time that I've mocked him to the Packers, it seems like more times than not, people disagree with that pick. So it's cool to see other people kind of, not that they're necessarily, obviously they're not agreeing with it just because I said it, but it's cool to see people that I haven't spoke to about the draft process, them coming up with some similar players that they like as well. So that's really, really cool as well. Chris M was the first person to talk about Big Citrus, that's for sure. And you guys know I wasn't big on Big Citrus at first, and then he kind of adjusted on our board, and it's like, okay, makes sense at a certain pick, not 52 for me, but it does make sense for the Packers to potentially look at him as well. So Chris, you were all over that one if I remember correctly, sir. We got Daniel in here. Good morning, Packer Nation. Happy Valentine's Day. Go Pack Go. Right back at you, buddy. Appreciate you swinging through. All right, let's get into it, guys. Let's jump into the first topic here, and that's the free agency cheat sheet. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on each of these topics. I don't want to overkill it, but you guys have access to it over in the Patreon group. If you're in there, you've seen we already threw this article up, and really, really simple, really straightforward. Again, I went through and looked at the positions that I think are positions of need, and then I combed through PFF's ranking system of the free agents available. So the number you see to the left of these names, and it may be hard for people to see here on the stream. Let me see if I can get zoomed in there a little bit more. There we go. So the number to the left, it isn't where I ranked them. That's where PFF had them ranked in terms of the top free agents available. Okay. So like Tyler Linderbaum is the third most valuable free agent according to PFF. Now keep in mind, that doesn't mean market value. They don't explain exactly what it means, but it's a good starting point to kind of go through and find free agents. I like to cross-check these with projected market value from Spot Track. And the reason that I do that, gang, is because Spot Track kind of looks at it from more of a statistical standpoint and game played percentage, so availability, accountability, and production. And they compare it to other players at a similar age and kind of come up with a fair market value. So typically, if you sort by fair market value, or just projected market value, I should say, you'll kind of get a list in order of, wow, these guys carry the most value based off of all those comps that Spot Track provides. So that's a good little cross-check method. Again, these numbers are just strictly where PFF had them ranked. And again, you'll notice there's some players, like on our full cheat sheet that I created, I put all the top free agents listed on it. It's a much longer list, but then I put a blue mark next to the players that I really liked. I'm like, okay, they showed consistency. They showed that they could stay healthy. I think that the tape probably matches up with the PFF grades a little bit more than maybe this player that might be overinflated or underappreciated in that regard. So these are the blue mark players on my original rough draft cheat sheet. Okay, so let's go through the list here real quick. Centers, Tyler Linderbaum. He's the third best free agent according to PFF. I'm just going to say the third best free agent, and you guys just understand that this is PFF's rankings, okay? So Tyler Linderbaum is the third best free agent, and then in the 78 spot is Connor McGovern from Buffalo. Those are the only two centers I really like in free agency. Now, you're probably going, where's Sean Ryan, Clayton? These are potential starters is what I'm looking at, right? Especially at the center position. I'm not opposed to bringing Sean Ryan back. I'm just opposed to bringing Sean Ryan back as your starting center, right? I don't think he's the answer to fix our center problems. When you look at Sean Ryan and how he played, I think he's a good stopgap in terms of, man, your center goes down with an injury, bring him in, let him kind of take care of business and hold the fort down until your center gets healthy. I think everybody across the league, look, if your starting center gets hurt, the chips are stacked against you regardless of who you got in at the backup position. But I do like the fact that Sean Ryan didn't completely crap the bed. Now, the pass blocking left a lot to be desired, but he was a much better run blocker, right? So when you look at it in that regard, I thought Sean Ryan played okay. Again, I don't think he's the answer at center. So I would be okay with the Packers going after either Tyler Linderbaum or Connor McGovern. Now, Tyler Linderbaum's probably going to be somewhere between 16 to 22 million per on average. It doesn't mean that's going to be the cap hit, but just an AAV breakdown, he's probably looking at 16 to 22 million. Connor McGovern probably significantly less than that. Maybe he's closer to the 10 to 12 range, right? Now, obviously the talent drops off to kind of total that drop off in salary as well, right? But Connor McGovern, I would be okay with going forward with him as our starting center, to be honest with you. I think it's not like a slam dunk home run acquisition, if that's the right way to say it, purchase, free agent, signing, however you want to say it. But I think it's an improvement from Sean Ryan, hands down. So, and again, this is assuming Jacob Monk isn't the guy. Jacob Monk played, I think, 50-some snaps last year. He graded out in the 70s. He looked pretty good. But that's a very, very small sample size. Now, maybe they get into training camp or heck, maybe they get into OTAs or whenever the offseason starts here and the coaches get together and discuss, you know what, Jacob Monk's the guy moving forward. I don't see that being the case, but you can't rule it out, right? So if they do think Jacob Monk can play the role, then why not save the money you would spend on Linderbaum? Although I think it's an important position. You guys know I've been very vocal. If you're going to overspend for a player in free agency, to me, Linderbaum is that guy, personally, is how I feel. Now let's move on to guards real quick. There's several guards. You'll notice this is why I like doing these exercises, is because you can see where there's more players at different positions where you go, oh, wow, that's a little more loaded. You could probably get some better value there. Again, price is typically driven by supply and demand. If you have a high supply of something and a low demand of something, then the price is going to drop, right? If you have a low supply of something and a high demand of something, the price is going to skyrocket. So like with Tyler Linderbaum being the hands down, he's the best center. There's nobody close to him. And we know that there's several teams in the league that are looking for starting centers. We're always looking for starting centers. I mean, there's not 32 teams in the league that go, boy, I really like our center. I promise you that. So you got a low supply and a high demand. That's why he may get closer to that 20 to 22 range as opposed to 16. But when you get to the guard position, and I'm going to butcher some of these names, just bear with me. But you got, like, if this is how you say it, Samalo out of, or Sayamalo, maybe Samalo. I'm going to go with that, out of Pittsburgh. He's the 17th best free agent, right? And then it drops down to 32 at David Edwards in Buffalo. Then only 5 more spots, the 37 to Elijah Vera Tucker with the Jets. Then you drop down to 55 with Joe Bitonio in Cleveland. Only 2 spots to Kevin Zeitler from Tennessee. Then 106 Ed Ingram, 163 Tevin Jenkins with Cleveland. So what you're seeing there is you've actually got three free agents at the guard position that are in the top 50 of free agents this offseason. If these players don't get signed, keep in mind, guys, they may re-sign with their team and we'll adjust as we go. But there's only one top 50 player at the center position. So you can kind of see how a team might be overpaying for Linderbaum, and you might be able to get a deal at the guard position. Tevin Jenkins is one that if you could get him on a minimum contract, he played pretty good football with Cleveland last year. I mean, I used to look at Tevin Jenkins like he was a bust, a draft bust. I want to say he played in Chicago. I just remember the name Tevin Jenkins and thinking, yeah, he hasn't lived up to expectations. But sometimes guys are late bloomers. What if you could get him for $2 or $3 million per, right? And that might be a potential replacement for Aaron Banks if you want to go post June 6th or post June 1 cut, and you move on from him and free up a bunch of extra money on the backside, right? That could be the case. So guard, to me, you got several options at the guard position. Keep an eye on that in free agency here this year. Now, notice offensive tackles. There are no players I like. There's plenty of players on the list. I mean, but there were none that I didn't even round down the cheat sheet. Like when Rasheed Walker is the best option and they're projecting him at $22 million, we just experienced the Rasheed Walker effect, right? Good pass blocker, bad run blocker, made huge mistakes in the most important game of the season. He was a 7th round pick for a reason. I think it was a great pick by Goody. We got a lot of wear and tear out of that at the left tackle position. I don't feel like we ever looked up and said Rasheed Walker is the reason we're losing games, and that's a plus, but that's not a reason to overpay for him, right? So offensive tackle, very thin this free agency go around, if that makes sense. Now, moving along here to tight ends. Now, people were saying, Clayton, is tight end really a need? It's not a huge need, no. But if you're going to press into 12 personnel, how good do you feel about Luke Musgrave? So the better question is, who would you rather have playing your U tight end position? Okay, who would you rather have? Not that traditional Y attached that Tucker Kraft plays. Who would you rather have playing your U position? Luke Musgrave or Kyle Pitts? Okay, I would rather have Kyle Pitts. He's a much more polished football player. He's a big receiver, essentially, just like Luke Musgrave. How about Dallas Goedert? Would you rather have Dallas Goedert or Luke Musgrave? You may say, well, Dallas Goedert's best football's behind him. He's not going to peak anymore. Maybe we haven't tapped into Musgrave completely. I can understand that sentiment. But again, it's a pretty close call there for Dallas Goedert or him. Next on the list at 76 spot is Travis Kelce. Now, this is kind of laughable. I think there is zero chance that Travis Kelce would play for the Green Bay Packers. If he's going to play, he's probably going to play for the Chiefs. I don't know if he'll play at all. But again, I included him on the list because of all the lists of the tight ends that I went through and kind of analyzed a little bit. He's one that I was like, man, if he would come up here for $5 million, that's an improvement over Luke Musgrave, hands down, right? Especially that veteran leadership. He's won multiple rings. But again, don't take this the wrong way. I think there's zero chance that Travis Kelce goes to the Green Bay Packers. All right. And then at 125, an interesting late one that you might be able to get on a $2 or $3 million deal potentially is Charlie Kolar from Baltimore. So with Charlie Kolar, they run a lot of 12 personnel over there, run heavy offense. He was one. It just seems like Baltimore continues to churn out good tight ends, right? There was a point where Mark Andrews considered a top 3 tight end in the league. And then, of course, I feel like he dropped off a little bit, and then Isaiah Likely burst on the scene, right? Well, now you got Charlie Kolar who's grading out good. That's a guy with like maybe a later or a cheaper, I should say, free agency signing that could be a sneaky good signing. Now, if you sign him, you'd have Tucker Kraft, Charlie Kolar, Luke Musgrave, right? And then, of course, you'd have whoever you're going to bring back of the cluster of players, your John Fitzpatricks, your Josh Wileys. And I had to go back through the injury notes, but I know there was 1 or 2 of those players that might not be available for the first of the season. We'll see. But if you added someone like a Charlie Kolar to that room, I'd feel a lot better about the tight end position. You could also attack it in the draft a little bit if the board falls just right. But those are just a handful of names that I would keep an eye on there as well. Let's move over now to the defensive side of the ball on the cheat sheet, and that's defensive tackle. You've got Calais Campbell at the top of the list here at 29. It doesn't mean I like him the most. Again, this is PFF's rankings. So Calais Campbell is the 29th best free agent. At number 47, you got David Onyemata. At 168, You got Levi Ozarike from Detroit. And then at 276, Logan Hall. And this is why I say take it with a grain of salt with the rankings here and the number next to it. PFF said he's the 276th best defensive lineman in free agency. Or not defensive line, but player in free agency. But yet when you looked at the market value before, it was well over 10 million. That may have dropped now. Somebody said it was like around 8 million. Another person said I'd see 6 million. So you guys do your own research there. But Logan Hall is one that's on my list. If he is considered to be outside of the top 250 available free agents, that means you can get him for a steal if teams really seen him that way. I would love to get Logan Hall. I wouldn't mind to sign 2 of these guys, to be honest with you. And I know there's a portion of the fan base that's going to say we don't have the money to do that, Clayton. That's a bunch of BS. You can free up that money just like that. It's how important is the defensive tackle position to you, and that's what Wendell Ferrero was talking about with Devontae Wyatt, now going to be 28 years old. If we have time, we'll dive into that on a segment here in just a little bit if I can hold up. I'm feeling a little bad right now, to be honest with you. But we'll try to get through this. We'll try to tough it out. So there's a defensive tackle position. I see 4 free agents that I like. It doesn't mean that Goody's list is limited to 4. He's probably got a huge list. He's probably got a couple gems that I haven't done enough research and know anything about, right? But those are the 4 that really grab my attention on that available free agent list as it sits right now on February 14th, okay? Let's move on to linebacker. Quay Walker. We did a video on him yesterday. I'll try to attach it at the end of this video. If it's not, just scroll down through our video tabs here on the YouTube channel, and you'll see that breakdown we did on it. I like Quay back at the right price. 10 million is not that number for me. For me, if I can get him at 7 million, maybe 8, I'd be okay with bringing him back. But I think you could truly upgrade that position or add a little bit more stability and depth and not have to shell out $10 million. Now, if you go with the Devin Lloyd, you go for a home run free agent signing. He's the 4th highest ranked free agent, according to PFF, out of Jacksonville. He is hands down the best stack backer in free agency. Now, it's probably going to cost you about 16 or 17 million. Do you want to pay that for a stud linebacker? I think he's worth every dime based off what we've seen to this point. And again, you had our boy Anthony Campanelli went down and took over as DC in Jacksonville, and Devin Lloyd skyrocketed, right? So is there a little bit of that effect? You know, if we go back to last year, Adrian Cooper was an absolute stud, right? I'm talking about like all-pro caliber, in my opinion. Well, that was when Coach Camp was here. Well, Coach Campanelli goes to Jacksonville. Adrian Cooper still had a good season, but he dropped off a little bit. I think we would all agree, right? So hopefully he returns back to form, and that's just kind of a sophomore slump. Although a slump, it's a hell of a slump when you're still grading out in the mid-70s and looking like a stud on the tape, right? So next on the list in the number 8 spot is Devin Bush from Cleveland. Similar. I think I would much rather have Devin Lloyd or Devin Bush over Quay Walker. That's just me personally, okay? And Devin Bush, I want to say he was somewhere between 8 to 10 million was what his price range was. So if Quay warrants 10 million and somebody's willing to give it to you, you can give Devin Bush 8 million, go get Devin Bush. I would much rather have Devin Bush. If it was apples to apples, Devin Bush or Quay Walker, I'm picking Devin Bush, just based off of what we've seen up to this point from both players. All right. Number 12 on the list is Leo Chenal. Leo Chenal, former Wisconsin Badger, if I remember correctly, he played for the Kansas City Chiefs. His market value is sitting at like 6 million. It's a stud. And he only played, like 500 snaps, 400 snaps. Obviously, he wasn't like a dominant stack backer. If you could get him at 6 million and all of a sudden you save 4 million per year, you upgrade the position a touch, you let Quay walk, absolutely. However, you plug in Leo Chenal, I would be okay with that. Another one's Bobby Wagner. Now, Bobby Wagner, obviously, he's on the backside of his career. We say it every year. He's still playing great football. He's in the 48 spot. Demario Davis is in the number 50 spot from the New Orleans Saints. And then, of course, Quay Walker, according to PFF, they have him ranked as the 139th best free agent on their list as it sits right now. So that's the stack backers, okay? So, again, a few more options there. That would suggest maybe you don't draft a stack backer. Maybe you go into free agency and try to get a deal on one of those guys on the back half of this list, right? Very, very similar to what we talked about with guard, right? Moving on to cornerback, you got several players here. Jamil Dean at the top of the list, according to PFF, in the 5 spot out of Tampa Bay. You got 21, Jalen Watson out of Kansas City. 72, you got Asante Samuel Jr. out of Pittsburgh. 74, Rasul Douglas out of Miami. 83, Joshua Williams out of Kansas City. 85, Chidobe Awuzie, if I'm saying it right, out of Tennessee. Then at 102, Roger McCreary. 114, Monteric Brown out of Jacksonville. And 116 is our very own Trayvon Diggs, who obviously set to be a free agent here this offseason. So when you look at that list, guys, like I would be okay with adding any of these guys. I'm going to say something that's probably going to catch a lot of scrutiny, and that's okay. I feel like any of those corners that are on that list, and again, when you look at that entire list, I'm trying to block it here, but I want y'all to be able to read it too. When you look at that entire list over here, right? Jamil Dean, Jalen Watson, Asante Samuel Jr., Rasul Douglas, Joshua Williams, Chidobe Awuzie. You've got Roger McCreary, Monteric Brown, and Trayvon Diggs. Any of those cornerbacks, I think you could make a case they'd be our number one corner day one. That's how bad the cornerback room played last year, right? And I say it bad. Like, we've talked about corner. I don't want to harp on it too much. We're going to go over on time. However, all I'm simply saying is if you added any of those players, your cornerback room just got better, right? And what if you added two? What if you went with two toward the bottom of the list there? And let's say one of your current guys like Carrington Valentine or Keyshawn Nixon beats them out in training camp, right? And now you've got a solid backup behind them. That's a way you can bolster the cornerback room for pennies on the dollars to a certain extent. Because Trayvon Diggs, he was making $19 million average annual value with Dallas. His projected market value, I've seen it anywhere from $8 million all the way down to $2 million. We'll see. We'll see how much interest he garners. So that's a quick look at the cheat sheet for free agents. I'm curious to know if you guys are watching this video back later. Let us know in the comments. How do you feel about that cheat sheet? Is there players that maybe I missed? Do you like all those players? Is there one in particular at each position you like? Fire them off in the comments. Let's take the conversation over there. And make sure you guys hit like. Make sure you subscribe. Click the bell icon so you don't miss out on any future live streams. We greatly appreciate y'all. All right, let's move along now, gang. Actually, I want to just hit the chat here real quick, see kind of what everybody was saying. I'm thinking, Mike Z said Douglas was a favorite of mine. Hey, Rasul Douglas played good, man, when he was, whoa, that's scary. Rasul Douglas played good when he was with us, right? Again, we traded him around for a third-round pick or traded him away for a third-round pick. He comes back, or he kind of has a resurgence with his career, has a great year, then he falls off, and everybody's like, oh, no, he's done now. And then last year, I think he had a pretty good year. So there's one bad year kind of mixed in between two good years since we let him go, if I remember correctly. So I'd be okay with Rasul as a little stopgap for the right price, right? Chris in here says veteran 3-tech and veteran cornerback is the answer. Yeah, I mean, when you look at the draft, that's the other thing too. Like when you line these up, like you're sighting in a rifle, right? If you guys ever go to the range, when you're sighting in a rifle, you're kind of zeroing in on that sweet spot. So when you look at the available free agents we just talked about, let's go defensive tackle since Chris talked 3-tech. Let's just say defensive tackle in general. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on my cheat sheet in terms of the draft board. Okay, so we got 7 defensive tackle prospects in the top 100. And then when you looked at the cheat sheet for defensive tackle and free agency, we only have 4 guys listed, right? So it's like, okay, overall, you got 11 players you feel pretty good about that might be able to contribute early on to your football team in 2026. When you look at it from that angle, it makes the conversation a lot more interesting. It's like, okay, how loaded is the defensive tackle position? It's not that low, not like corner. Corner, you've got multiple options in the draft here. It looks like just looking at it, there's going to be way more opportunities to land a top 100 prospect at the cornerback position than there is defensive tackle. And the same thing applies in free agency. So you're probably going to want to overpay a little bit for a defensive tackle, whether it's truly in free agency and overpaying dollars and cents, or if it's maybe drafting someone, reaching a little bit, drafting them a little higher than you wanted to, just to ensure you get one of those top 100 prospects. So that's a good way of kind of filtering out some of the noise when it comes to trying to determine, do you want to sign these guys in free agency, or if you want to sign them or spend a draft pick on them, if that makes sense. So, all right, now let's shift gears real quick and let's jump into a little cheat sheet for the draft process. Very, very similar approach. Okay, what we did, like I said, we included our top 100 prospects from our PTA big board and what we did was we put where they rank on our PTA big board, okay? And then also what school they went to, okay? We got it broken down into positions here. So you'll notice here right off the bat, when you look at offensive tackle, there are a lot of offensive tackles in the top 100. I said the other day, and I hope people didn't take it the wrong way. I said, if I had to put money on what position we drafted with the 52nd overall pick, my money would probably be on tackle. because there's a lot of really good tackles in this draft. And we know how Goody loves drafting tackles and kicking them inside, right? So that's kind of where I would probably put my money on where they would pick. But let's run through the list, the same as we did with the free agents here, and see what everybody else thinks. So let's start with offensive tackle. Here are the players: Spencer Fano out of Utah in the 9 spot, Francis Mawaga out of Miami at 11. You got Caden Proctor out of Alabama in the 17 spot. You got Monroe Frilling out of Georgia at the 27 spot. At 35, you got Caleb Lomu, however you say the name there, out of Utah. So that's Spencer Fano's, that's his teammate. 38, you got Blake Miller out of Clemson. You guys double check the colleges because it gets really, really tricky when I'm trying to compile the list because of all the transfer portal stuff. It'll pull up where they played college the year before, and God knows there's not a player that's staying at the same university 2 years in a row, right? Welcome to 2026. Blake Miller out of Clemson, we've mocked him a couple times. So you notice we got him in the 38 spot. That's a guy that if he's sitting there at 52, it's going to be hard to pass up on him. There were several mock drafts we did where Blake Miller was hands down our best prospect on the board when we picked. Okay, 49, you got Jennings Dunker out of Iowa. 52, you got Manasi Itete, if I'm saying it right, out of Arizona State. You got Ty Lofton out of the University of Virginia at the 55 spot. Then at 72, you've got Deuce Lemieux out of Arizona. And 87, you got Austin Barber out of Florida. So, again, you got a pretty good little group to pick from. Now, the problem is every other team in the NFL is putting top priority on tackles as well, right? So, these guys may go quick. But just on the surface, looking at these, comparing apples to apples, offensive tackles seem to be fairly loaded, all right? So, look for the Packers to potentially take a tackle here early in the draft. We'll see how that shakes out. Moving on to defensive tackle. This goes hand in hand with the conversation that Chris was just having in the chat. Defensive tackles at number 21, you got it says Tyleek McDonald. Is that right? Is that really his name? Yeah. So it's that name is wrong there. What are we doing? That's bad wrong. I got to straighten that out. So I think it means Caden McDonald. He did not play for he played for Ohio State, right? So I think that's Caden McDonald, if I remember correctly. You guys throw the name in the chat so everybody knows. I don't have time to look it up. Well, actually, I probably could. Let me just roll up real quick to the draft board. Because he is, Caden McDonald. So I need to get that changed. I'll make a note there to edit that out. So Caden McDonald is the top defensive tackle. All right. And he's out of Ohio State, if I remember correctly. Just to double check. Yes, that's correct. All right. So Caden McDonald won there in the 21 spot. 23, you got Caleb Banks out of Florida. 31, Peter Woods out of Clemson. 33, Kristen Miller out of University of Georgia. You guys know that's been kind of my guy early on. We'll see if it finalizes or not. 41, you got Lee Hunter, all right? And then it drops all the way down to 91 with Darrell Jackson out of Florida State. And then you've got 99, Dominique Big Citrus Orange there, okay? So when you look at the defensive tackle spot, what do you notice, guys? You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys in the top 50, right? And then only 2 more remaining in the top 100. So when we pick at 53 or 52, when we pick at 52, if all of those guys, McDonald, Banks, Woods, Miller, Hunter, and Jackson and just Hunter are all gone when we pick at 52, it's going to be a reach to go get Darrell Jackson or Dominic Orange. Okay. That's why I say it doesn't really line up. Now, if they're there at 84, that feels a little more palatable. But again, what you're noticing is when you compile all the information, both in free agency and the players that we like in free agency, and you look alongside the defensive tackles in the draft, what you're finding is probably going to need to be a little bit aggressive if you want to go get a D tackle. Now, the question becomes, is that our top priority? I don't feel like we struggled last year mainly because we didn't have strong defensive tackle play. I think the reason that we struggled was because of injuries, one, but our offensive line. So I definitely put offensive line as a bigger need. So with that being said, you do have to take into consideration the lack of talent at the defensive tackle position in this specific draft. Therefore, you might be, if you're going to get a defensive tackle, you might want to be a little more aggressive in free agency. And it just so happens you might be able to get an Onyemata or a Calais Campbell for a discounted rate, and they're considered our best defensive tackles in free agency. You know, if Logan Hall, because of his youth and his ascension right now in the league, he's not been an elite player, but he's getting better every year. If that skyrockets his market value, then why not go out and get one or two of the other guys at a cheaper rate, right? And now you bolster the defensive tackle position, and you don't have to reach at 52 for a Darrell Jackson, right? Those are the type of things that I try to take into consideration whenever we're breaking down the draft process. And this is why we get into both draft and free agency before those two eras even hit. Or some people going, oh, it's too early to talk draft. It's never too early to talk about the draft, because these are the type of exercises you can do to really get a grab on where the market is, both in free agency and essentially what a market is in the draft as well. So that's kind of what I'm coming away with at the defensive tackle position. Now, moving on to stack backer. Sonny Styles, and again, these are in no particular order in terms of needs. We're just kind of going through the list as it sits on the page so we don't skip over anything. Sonny Styles in the number 8 spot. Arvell Reese at 14. C.J. Allen at 37. Jack Golday at 48. Anthony Hill Jr. at 61. Jacob Rodriguez at 65. Deontay Lawson at 76. Jared Trotter at 93. And Torin York at 95. So what you're seeing with stack backer is there's a lot to choose from there, guys. You're probably going to have a good stack backer fall in your lap. Definitely at 84, but possibly at 120. I think we're picking at 120. You guys double check that for me. But there's a good chance that either Jared Trotter, it is supposed to be Josiah Trotter. What is going on with my system, man? I double checked everything and then did a final copy, and evidently AI completely screwed up this list for me. Wonderful. Anyway, Trotter at 93 on the list. I just need to remove the colleges and have them double check the names, I guess. But with Trotter at 93, I want to make sure that lines up. Yeah, 93, and then York at 95. What I would think I would want to do at stackbacker is hold off until pick 120 and see if one of those guys falls. And who knows, maybe Deontay Lawson, maybe he falls, right? Maybe Jacob Rodriguez falls in your lap. I doubt it. But what if one of those two guys fall in your lap at 120? So when people say, are you really going to draft a stack backer? If one of those guys falls in the right spot, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And if you don't think it's important, go back and watch the tape and watch tight ends. What's his name? Colston Loveland burnt our butt on those crosser routes all day long against Chicago. You know, now some of that was the DB's faults as well, not hammering down enough on the coverage as it hits that what we call the Mabel side, right? Like there was one point we had 3 defenders essentially playing like a Mabel coverage. And if you wonder what Mabel is, it's basically you've got 3 zones covered along the sideline, and he still fitted in the window. And it's not because Caleb made an absolutely great throw. It's because Keyshawn was lollygagging and dragging his ass to the play. And it's like, what are we doing here? So again, it's not just on the stack backers, but if you get a player where you can improve that position, whether it's a Devin Lloyd or somebody in free agency like we talked about, and they don't make that play, we maybe win that game. You see what I'm saying? So these things, they do tally up. They add up. So that's the stack backer position. So again, when we looked in free agency, we like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players. That includes Quay Walker at the right price. We're like 6. And then here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9 or 10 players there. So no reason to try to push the envelope on stack backer. Let the board come to you there. You don't have to reach. And same thing in free agency. You don't have to overpay for it. That's why it's like, why not just lowball a couple of these guys like Leo Chenal or somebody like that? And if you get a great deal on them, awesome. You upgraded the position and you saved a bunch of money in the process. So that makes sense. All right, moving along to let's go to tight end before we get to cornerback. So at the tight end position, you got Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon. He's in the 18 spot, and then it drops all the way outside of the top 50. So Sadiq is hands down the best tight end in this draft as the board sits here on February 14th right now. Then outside of the top 50, you got Eli Stowers from Vandy. 58, you got Max Clare from Ohio State. 79, you got Michael Trigg from Baylor. 84, you got Jack Andres from Cal. And then 85, you got my boy Tanner Kazoil at Houston. The reason I say it's my boy, multiple mock drafts, we were able to get Tanner Kazoil at 120 and even later. If you can get the 85th best prospect according to our board at 120, run the damn card. It's too good of a value there. And that's going to help you bolster that 12 personnel. Now back to the free agent talk on tight end, right? When we broke down the free agents on tight end, I can't even remember who was on the list. I don't have them wrote down on my cheat sheet here. Already closed that other one out. But you guys go back and give a look at that video and see what we had. I'm trying to think. It was people like Travis Kelce was one, right? I think it was 4. We had 4. That was the number I was looking for. We have 4 players on that list. And here at tight end in the draft, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, with one potentially being a late round gem, right? So that's kind of how the tight end position shakes out in that regard. Let's move on now to cornerback. At cornerback, you've got a flurry of players in the top 100. You got Mansour Delaney out of LSU in the 7th spot. At 13, you got Jamad McCoy from Tennessee. At 20, you got Avian Terrell out of Clemson. 29, you got Colton Hood. That was Jamad McCoy's teammate at Tennessee. All right. And just a little inside football here. You guys know I keep up with Tennessee a lot. I got a good buddy. Shout out to Boogie Bentley, who's got an awesome show on YouTube if you like UT football. I follow them really, really closely because it's a college that's close to where I live, and I like to kind of keep up with that and in the local area. And Jamad McCoy was supposed to be like hands down the best corner going into the draft. Well, he suffered a knee injury at the end of 2024, and there was rumors he was going to come back. He's going to come back. He's going to come back. Okay, he'll be back this week. Oh, it might be 2 or 3 more weeks. He never did play this year. So it sounds like he just played it safe, held off until all right, let me just go ahead and get into the draft process. I think it's a good move. You got to play it safe. And I know it probably ticked off some Tennessee fans, but it is what it is, man. You don't want to risk your whole future to go out there and, and in my opinion, play college when you're basically, if you're coming back too early and you ruin your career, you're leaving a lot of money on the table long term, right? So Jamad McCoy was supposed to be the guy. He didn't play. Colton Hood really stepped up. So keep an eye on Colton Hood at 29. 34 is one of our draft crushes, Chris Johnson. We drafted him several times. Same thing with number 40, D'Angelo Pons. I'd be okay with either of those guys at 52. Would love that. I think Colton Hood, anybody above Chris Johnson at 52, probably going to be gone. Even Johnson and Pons might be gone by then. Then you got Keontez Abney. He is, I think, out of Arizona State, if I remember correctly. So keep an eye on him at 43. Brandon Cease, I think is how you say the name, out of South Carolina. He's in the 44 spot. That's your top 50 corner. So you got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cornerbacks in our top 50 on our PTA big board. Then outside of the top 50, you got Caden Scott. I want to say Caden Scott is the versatile player. I could be wrong there. You guys go double check that. But when it comes to the cornerback position, there's one of these guys that we threw in the blue and listed them as versatile because they can play safety as well. Trying to find him here. Maybe he's on down the list. Anyway, just look for that. If they've got next to our position on the PTA big board, if you see a V, if it's a dash V, that's what that means. Okay. It means they're a versatile player. They may just be a slot corner. They may be able to kick around to all different spots. So just double check that. Okay. And then you got at 78, you got Davison Igbinosun out of Ohio State. I think we took him in the 84 spot once, right? And we really like that pick. So these guys are kind of in that range around 84. And then you've got it's supposed to be Julian Neal there. We'll get that list straightened out. In the number 80 spot out of Arkansas. And then 81, you got Chandler Rivers out of Duke. Chandler Rivers was much higher on our board before. Okay. He was much higher on our board before. And he has since dropped since like Dane Brugler released his top 100 and Daniel Jeremiah put out a top 50. And then since we added Tankathon in as well. So Chandler Rivers probably going to be more around that 84 range as opposed to 52 where we had taken him before. Okay. Now, moving on to centers. Guys, there's only 4 guys on the list here, right? Slim pickings. And again, in free agency, we talked about this as well. There's only 2 guys in free agency we like. So you got 6 centers that you feel like could make an impact, in my opinion, could make an impact for the Green Bay Packers this year. Connor Lew, however, he's got an injury. He's at the top of our list at 58, but he's coming back from the ACL. Keep in mind, he won't be ready. I'll be very, very surprised if he's ready in September. It'll probably be closer to October or November if he does play at all this year. So do your own research on Connor Lew's injury. Outside of that, it drops all the way down to 71 with Jake Slaughter from Florida, 82 Brian Parker out of Duke, and then 89 Patrick Coogan out of Indiana. Or yeah, that's right. Indiana. I don't know why I put Indy, but yeah, Indiana Hoosier. So Pat Coogan too, if I remember correctly, he played for Notre Dame a couple years ago. So that was one of those guys that they said that guy will help us win a national championship, and he did. So he's in the 89 spot. So what do you got? You got Tyler Linderbaum and Connor McGovern in free agency, and then you got put Connor Lew to the side for a minute. You got Jake Slaughter, Brian Parker, and Patrick Coogan. So really, you've only got 5 to choose from. You better go get your damn center. And you better get aggressive. Day one, Xavier McKinney type stuff. And what I mean by that is don't waste no time. As soon as free agency opens, here's our best offer. We'd love to sign you today. What do you think? Don't go, hey, would you be interested in coming to Green? Well, what's the number? Yeah, we'll get back to you. You better go figure out the center position right freaking now. Unless they got something going on behind the scenes we don't know about, and Zach Tom's going to kick the center and it's already shored up, you better go fix it right now. Because I'm telling you, if you're not aggressive in free agent and you don't go get a Tyler Linderbaum or a Connor McGovern, and then you get in the draft, you go, well, the board really doesn't line up. We don't want to reach at 52 for Jake Slaughter, and you come back at 84 and Pat Coogan's gone too. Now you're going into 2026 with the same exact problem you had last year, a struggling center position. So center is one of those earmark it guys like, hey, we need to attack that. We need to get that straightened out, which is all the more reason to go after Tyler Linderbaum. Again, I'd be okay with Connor McGovern, but I would love to see him go after Tyler Linderbaum. All right, and keep in mind, guys, we said this last year about Drew Dahlman, all right? And some people agreed with it and some people disagreed with it. Well, Drew Dahlman got signed by the Bears, and what did their offensive line do this year? Took a huge step forward. So that's frustrating. That's very, very frustrating. It's just like the draft. We talked about the draft process yesterday and how, you should have took Luther Burden over Matthew Golden. I love Matthew Golden. I think he's going to be a great player. He may end up being better than Luther Burden, but all signs indicated Luther Burden was a better football player. Like, you could go back and look at our board. I'm not saying this in hindsight because Luther Burden had a better year than Matthew Golden. I'm saying it's because what the damn draft board said. If our draft board said it, how is Goody's board so far in the opposite direction, right? Maybe he's got more athletic ability. That could be the case. Maybe that's a cluster buster. Maybe they had the same grade on those guys. It is what it is. But you go, Clayton, that's just one pick, and that's a fair argument. And you jump down to the second round pick. We took Anthony Belton in the second round, right? 2 spots before they took Ozzie Trapillo. Ozzie Trapillo was ranked 70-something on our board. Anthony Belton was in the 120s. Did we just luck up on the first 2 picks, guys? That's not luck. Again, the board is doing what the board's supposed to do. My question becomes, how did we miss on those guys so bad? And again, it doesn't mean Anthony Belton can't be a great football player. It doesn't mean Matthew Golden can't be a great football player. But after 1 year, first of all, before they played a year in the NFL, the board said these 2 guys are better than these 2 guys, and we got it completely ass backwards, right? And then let's see what they do. And you guys heard me on draft night. Hey, man, let's trust Goody here. He knows how to evaluate offensive line talent. And at the end of the season, Anthony Belton grades out in the 40s. You've got Ozzie Trapillo playing good football, much better football than Anthony Belton, according to the statistics, the analytics, the metrics. And then you had Luther Burden had a much greater impact in year 1 than Matthew Golden. And spare me the we didn't use Matthew Golden the right way talk. He was second on the team in targets, if I remember correctly. It wasn't that he was underutilized. He just wasn't pro-ready right out of the gate. And again, it doesn't mean he won't be pro-ready this year. He may scream past Luther Burden, and I hope that's the case. But the early indicators are we should have taken Luther Burden in that situation, if that makes sense. And I know it's not a popular opinion. Again, if you see it, you got to say it. I don't want this to just be a show where we just always go, the Packers are perfect. They did everything great. And I damn sure don't want to come across like I know more than them. That's not what I'm trying to do here. Just simply, again, that's why we provide the draft board link to everybody in our Patreon group. You guys do your own research, check it out. Get the PFF grades right there attached from the 25 season on the 25 draft board as well, so you can kind of see how they played at the NFL level. Let's move on to guard real quick and we'll wrap up. Guard in the draft, you got Logan Lone at the 15 spot. You got in the 46 spot, you got Emmanuel Prignon, okay, at 46. Outside of the top 50, you got Chase Basantis at 73. So when you look at the guard position game, in free agency, we found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys that we'd say that would help our football team. 7 in free agency, right? In the draft, only 3 in the top 100 at guard. So what's that tell you? You're going to go shore up a guard spot. If you decide to move on from Aaron Banks, and I hope we do, if you decide to do that, you've got plenty of people that you could sign as guards in free agency. So you don't have to reach for one in the draft. Again, you could find those guys in free agency. So hopefully that makes sense. And I see we got us a super chat and a couple other comments, so we'll get to those. But that's kind of a quick look. I'll try to clean up that list because obviously AI doing the revision there completely screwed up some of the universities. But you guys, I know the players, the number and the players' names are right for the most part because I put those in manually, other than the first names, which they screwed that up as well when I had them added in for time's sake. So if you guys are watching this back later, let us know, how do you feel about the draft board cheat sheet and our top 100? What position should we attack? Anything draft related, hit us up in the comments. Let us know what you think about that list. Make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe, click the bell icon so you catch all of our future live streams. We appreciate y'all. All right, let's move along now and have us a little mailbag. I know we got some questions from our Patreon group. Again, that's a perk to being in our Patreon group, is you get to ask questions for the show. We have a little mailbag section there in the chats. So we're going to get to that. I'm going to get to the super chat as well. So if you guys got super chats, fire those in there. I'll try to keep up with the regular chat as well. But Mike Z with the super chat, appreciate you, buddy. He says, we, in my opinion, don't want a rookie at center this year. I'm not saying draft one, but can't wait for development. Gotcha. So essentially what he's saying, if I'm understanding correctly, Mike, you're saying you're okay with drafting one, but boy, oh boy, if we're just going to plan on him being the starting center, that's not a good look, right? I mean, he may be a stud. He may be the next Linderbaum. He may be the next, gosh, I can't remember his name now, that we took. I've got so many names in my mind right now. The Chiefs center. Can't even remember his name. Anyway, he may be that guy if you draft the dude in the second or third round to start at center. It could be, but the chances of that happening are pretty slim. So why risk it, right, Mike? I agree with what you're saying there, man. Go get Tyler Linderbaum. Get it done. Day one. Now, if he re-signs with Baltimore, right, if that happens, then, and I wouldn't rule that out, but if he re-signs with, no, it wasn't Lindsley there, Holmes. It was, trying to think, Creed Humphrey. Thank you, Mike. There you go. Yeah, Chad Inc. got it too. Yeah, Creed Humphrey's who I was trying to think of. So if you land somebody like that, obviously they're going to be a great starter right out of the gate. It is what it is. But you can't bank on that, And I know there needs to be conviction in your picks, and I get all that, but I like what Mike's saying. It's too important of a position. Are we just going to do this again? What Holmes mentioned there with Lindsley, that was the last great center we had, right? How long ago was that? My goodness. And we just keep this. Well, we draft Josh Myers, and right out of the gate, it's like, this don't look good. Well, let's give him another year. This still don't look good. Well, this is the year. He played better last year. I heard that after his second year, and I'm like, what the hell, y'all? It reminded me of the Anthony Belton talk this year. I'm like, he may be a good player, but there's nobody that's going to convince me Anthony Belton played great this year. What are we watching the same tape? What are we? So anyway, Corey Lindsley, when you moved on from him, you went to what? I think it was Josh Myers immediately, right? And then from Josh Myers last year, we tried to kick Elton Jenkins over. That didn't work, right? And to me, this is what gives me hope about Linderbaum, guys, is the fact that Goody thought it was important enough to move Elton Jenkins to center, and he agreed to that, which, by the way, full disclosure here, there are some people that have convinced themselves that was Matt LaFleur's idea and they should have never done it. He should have stayed at left guard. That was Elton Jenkins' idea. Elton Jenkins said he wanted to play center, and he said he could improve that center position. And I agreed with it. Did he play great? No. Did he play bad? No, he didn't play bad, but he couldn't stay healthy. And he definitely didn't take the step that I thought he would moving to center, which many people believe, if you take a guard or a tackle and move them to center, they should perform much better, right? If they have the capabilities of playing center, if that makes sense. So, but yeah, man, you need to go get this shirt up. You got to go get his shirt up right now. And I think Linderbaum is the answer. And again, I would be okay with Connor McGovern. I think that would be an upgrade as well. So for sure. Yeah, Mike Z says, we're talking about the Favre era. I don't think it was the Favre era when Lindsley was here. It definitely wasn't. But, when you look back at the Favre era and what they did at the center position, my goodness, you have Frankie Winters holding it down forever, right? There was some really good centers that played before, for sure. But, yeah, you have to go back a while, Mike. There's no doubt about that, man. No doubt about that. All right, let's jump into the mailbag here on our Patreon group. Again, you guys can have access to this if you join our Patreon group, patreon.com/Packer Fan Total Access. It works just like Super Chats here on the live stream. Let's go with Johnny B right out of the gate. Johnny B said, here's a Jacob late 7th or undrafted free agent guy, center Bryce Foster from Kansas. He was originally looked at a potential first or second round guy, but he committed a lot of time to shot put in college, and many think it hurt his NFL stock. He's supposed to be well focused on the draft now and could be a bargain pick. So if I go over here now, and again, his name is Bryce Foster, and we find him on the list, we've got him in the 207 spot, so he's definitely a late round guy. Consensus Big Board had him at 334 at College Inn, 251 on the PFF Big Board. He graded out as the 62nd best center, not great in 25, but in 24, if you apply the Jaden Reed effect, he was 21st highest graded center. So wouldn't hate to pick late, Johnny. However, I think we would all agree, don't want to go in with that guy planning on being your starting center. And Johnny B's not saying that, I don't believe, but that is a guy that you might be able to add some extra value there at the center position if you go that route, right? So, and we got Johnny B with another one. Bryce is the name of the day here. He said, curious what you think of wide receiver Bryce Lance from North Dakota State. He's a possible replacement for Wicks if we plan to move on from him. He was coached by Coach Noah Pauley, and I think he played with Christian Watson his freshman year at North Dakota State. He's not a step in and start guy, but looks like great potential guy to work with or work in from this year's draft. So when we look at our boy, again, I know he's on the list. He's fairly high. Bryce Lance, we type in his name into our board here. Bryce Lance, we've gotten the 112 spot, Johnny B. 112. Graded out really well. In 2024, he was the 14th highest graded wide receiver. In 25, he jumped all the way to 7th. The consensus Big Board had him at 150. The PFF Big Board had him at 134. Tankathon had him in the 143 spot. Dane Brugler has him at 99. So that's a solid prospect. The problem is he sits in the 112 spot, right? Where would we be willing to draft him? You know, if you don't want to use 84 on him, would you use 120 on him? It would be a good value pick, although there's probably other prospects at positions of need that you'd rather have there. And if you spin that pick on someone like a Bryce Lance, how long is he going to have to sit? And again, at pick 120, you want those guys to contribute a little bit, right? I'll put it this way, Johnny, you could sell me on it after pick 120. I'd be okay with it for sure. But before 120, it's like, that's tough because we got so many other positions of need, right? And again, if he's hands down the best prospect on the board when we pick, I have no problem with the pick at 120. I don't. However, I don't think he'll be the best prospect on the board because you guys know how these things shuffle throughout the whole draft process. So appreciate you, Johnny. You are the man. And then on to Ron Samville's comment here. He said, did you notice that the Green Bay Packers were PFF's top graded tackling team? 81.3 grade was 7 points higher than second at 74.7 with the Lions. Just wondering your thoughts on that. I think it holds true to what we've seen. I think the Packers were a very good tackling team. I think that was a bright spot of their defense ever since Jeff Hafley arrived. I was worried that would drop a little bit this year with Anthony Campanelli leaving as linebacker coach, but it didn't. It didn't drop significantly. Obviously, we were the highest graded tackling team. So you got to ask yourself, what happened on those latter games? Like, why did the Packers struggle against the Bears? Why did we give up 25 points in the fourth quarter? Why did all these things happen, right? Injuries, you know? You're putting up good tackle grade numbers all year long, and the injuries kept piling up. And then bang, second half of the Chicago Bears game, you don't have Edgerrin Cooper. I mean, we're essentially playing with late round and undrafted free agent guys now, right? So like, what are we supposed to do in that regard? So it doesn't surprise me, Ron. And I think it's a positive thing that even after Anthony Campanelli, we continued to tackle well, right? So now the question becomes, was it Sean Duggan? Because now he's gone, right? Like, or is it Goody is specifically keyed in on when we're drafting defensive players we want them to tackle? I'll tell you, the first thing that came to mind for me, Ron, when I read your comment doing the show prep, the first thing that came to mind for me was Javon Bullard. Javon Bullard, really good against the run in that slot spot. I'm expecting Javon Bullard to take another step this year, and I'm excited about it because I think he can be a vital part of this defense. They're playing that slot, nickel, star, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, doesn't surprise me, but I think it's very, very, very important. So, all right. So there you go. There is your mailbag. of the day. So we'll just hang out in here for just a second. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Reef in the chat says, finding out all this information about who controls positions placement is crazy. If the players are confused when playing, this is why. Yeah, if you're talking about switching players around at different positions, like Elton Jenkins wanted to play center, I think it made a lot of sense. Now, if that conversation is what pushed them in the direction of going Aaron Banks, I don't think moving Elton to center was as much of a problem as it was Goody's thinking that Aaron Banks was the guy he thought he was. And it's obvious he had a very high draft grade on Aaron Banks, or else he wouldn't have spent that kind of money on him. And I told you guys it was as soon as we get the contract details, and we'll do the same thing with the free agency class this year. People heard 4 years, $77 million. They said, "Oh my God, they overpaid." And then they're like, "Let's wait and see what the contract says." And then when we looked in the contracts, they can get out of it after year one, and they can really get out of it with a post-June cut, right? And that's the situation we're at. But again, I held out hope that Goody knew what he was doing there, and the reality is he swung and missed. You got Aaron Banks at $24.8 million against the cap this year. You can free up $4 million immediately, or you can go post June 1 and free up $18 million, but you got to carry that earlier cap charge until June. But yeah, it was a bad signing. Now listen, they may keep him around another year, and it may pop this year, and we're having to eat our words. And I hope that's the case. I hope I'm looking back midway through the season and going, thank God Goody didn't listen to Clayton and get rid of Aaron Banks, because, man, that guy really stepped up this year. That was a reason we had success in the run game, or a reason that we had good pass. I hope that's the case. Just based off what we've seen last year, you can't really say that. And as much as people like the dog PFF, and myself included from time to time, when you looked at the PFF grades, it didn't match up with what Aaron Banks got in free agency, right? So kind of is what it is there. Let's see here. Joseph says Elton was starting to be washed during last season. That's why I didn't buy the transition. Understandably so, Joseph. He's definitely not the same player. I mean, he peaked in 2021, and he's definitely tapered off since then, right? So it's just kind of a tough situation altogether. It really is. But again, man, we can't harp on that, right? You move on and you fix the problem. And that's what I'm saying. Like, off the list that we looked at, and I'll wrap up with this. Aaron Banks, I think we'd all agree that didn't work last year. Elton Jenkins, it didn't work out, right? They're both $24.8 million against the cap. Guys, that's $49 million of our cap space and two players that we all agree underperformed. I don't think there's anybody that says those guys, no, they played like I expected them to. There's nobody saying that, no matter who's breaking down the tape, who's covering the Packers, right? So if you move on from those guys, you free up $18 million post-June for Aaron Banks, and you free up $20 million immediately with Elton Jenkins. So imagine you move on from your left guard and your center, and then you go and you get Tyler Linderbaum to start at center, okay? And let's say you have to give him $22 million per. His first year cap hit's going to be about $18 million. That's still however much cheaper there, $6 million cheaper than what Elton's cap would have been. And then you go and sign one of these guards we talked about, someone like a Tevin Jenkins, who PFF says played significantly better than Aaron Banks last year. What if you got a Tevin Jenkins or an Ed Ingram or a Kevin Zeitler or a Joe Bitonio over Elijah Vera Tucker or a David Edwards or a Samalo there out of Pittsburgh? I would rather stay outside of the top three there and get a really good deal. Like, really, Elijah Vera Tucker down. If you can get one of those 4 or 5 guys I just listed to play left guard for you, and you get them at $4 or $5 million per, you just shave down your bottom line in terms of cap, and you improved your offensive line because you went and got Tyler Linderbaum and you got another starting guard. And guess what? You can still draft an offensive lineman. Maybe Blake Miller still falls to you at tackle, at the tackle position. Maybe he falls to you at 52, and you get the 38th best prospect, former tackle that may kick inside. And I'm not opposed to taking tackles and kicking them inside. I'm not opposed to doing that. I'm opposed to taking a left tackle and making them play right guard. That's just freaking stupid. That makes no sense to me unless there's Zach Tom. And there was no indication that that's what Jordan Morgan was. So now I'm happy that it's looking like we're going to see Jordan Morgan at left tackle, and I think he's going to play good there. I do. I don't think he'll be a drop-off from Rashid. We're going to have him at $4 million as opposed to Rashid, who might get $22 million in free agency. So that's how I would fix the offensive line, is move on from Elton Jenkins, move on from Aaron Banks, sign Tyler Linderbaum, and get one of those 5 or 6 guards we listed that check the box. Now your offensive line shored up, and then at cornerback, you keep the corners that's coming back, right? And then you go take a pick here on one of these corners in free agency. someone like, maybe it is Trayvon Diggs. Maybe he's the guy and you can get him for $5 or $6 million. That'd be awesome, right? Maybe you go get Monteric Brown as well. So now you've taken the weak spots of your roster, offensive line, you've improved it while maintaining or saving cap. And then you add a couple of key pieces at the cornerback position, discounted rates, good deals. Some of these guys, it's got good value a little later. But here's the part that I struggle with convincing myself Goody's going to do this. All of those players I mentioned, for the most part, are aging vets. And he just doesn't like to do that. There's only 2 players on the roster that was over the age of 30. That was your kicker and your long snapper. So I'm still holding out hope we go that route, but that's how I would fix 2 of the biggest needs. And then you let the board come to you. If you go get those free agents we just talked about, now you let the draft board fall in your lap. And who knows, maybe you look up at 52 and you go, my God, we've got a top 20 talent at edge defender, and he fell right in our lap. We don't need an edge, Clayton. Why not? It's a tier 1 position of importance. That's how you bolster your roster. Maybe a Kristen Miller somehow falls to you at 52. Hell, maybe Goody shocks the world and trades up to 48 and gets somebody like Kristen Miller. And you already shored up your needs at offensive line. You already shored up your needs at cornerback and free agency. And now all of a sudden, bang, you got a stud defensive tackle that we feel really good about contributing day one alongside Devontae White. And guess what happens there? You now don't have to overpay Devontae White. I was going to get in that article by Wendell Ferreira. I'll do it a little bit later today, but keep that in mind when we get into that show later today. Imagine if you approach it that way and you did not extend Devontae White. And what if you were able to trade up a little bit and grab a solid defensive tackle, whether it's whoever it may be here. McDonald will be long gone. Banks will be gone. Peter Woods will be gone. Maybe it's Kristen Miller or Lee Hunter. Maybe one of those fall right in your lap, right? And now all of a sudden you've shored up 3 spots. You've improved your roster in 3 spots that you knew were positions of need. So that's kind of how I see it. I agree. Joseph says we always need a top 20 edge. Amen, buddy. Now, will they be there? Probably not, right? Probably not going to have a top 20 player at the edge position available at 52. But again, when you take care and you seal up some of these holes because you're going to remove the ego and say, okay, we don't have to be the youngest team anymore. Let's get a couple more veterans in here. We can get them at a discounted rate and they come with experience and they're not going to crap the bed on when the bright lights come on in the playoffs, right? You shore up those positions in free agency and now you can let the board come to you in the draft. So that's it. I'm done. Hopefully this show was okay because I feel like crap and I may seem a little irritable. I apologize if that's the case, but I want to thank everybody in the chat. You guys were awesome. Thank you, Mike, for the super chats, buddy. We appreciate you. Everybody that contributed in here in the chat. The conversation was great. Also, everybody in our Patreon group over at patreon.com/Packer Fan Total Access. I'm going to get some of these sheets cleared up for y'all, get some of the errors removed on the schools and things from those cheat sheets, make sure that's correct. And then we'll probably go live again a little bit later today. I'm going to see what the wife wants to do for Valentine's Day. We went to dinner last night, but we may get out and hit some more festivities today. So hopefully everybody has an awesome day. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. If you would, hit that like button, hit subscribe, click the bell icon. The biggest thing you can do right now for us, guys, is find our Overflow channel. Go to wherever you get your podcast. Just search Packer Fan Total Access. Subscribe to the podcast. Give us a 5-star review. We would greatly, greatly appreciate that. That way, if you're ever on the go and you don't have YouTube handy, you can just go wherever you get your podcast audios and bang, you got it right there. We're still on PackerNet. You'll find that Monday through Friday, but the weekends, the overflow, the extra content, you can always get that over at Packer Fan Total Access. So that being said, guys, everybody have a great day. My name's Clayton. This is PTA. I'm going to go drink some cough syrup. Go Pack, go.
There we go.
Bye, guys.